What's going on, y'all? This is Greg. Greg said it. Back at it here. What we going on week 5. I remember during all seasons, everybody was worried about getting to the season and rushing. I said, hold it together. It's going to come and go. I remember last year how fast it went. It's like all the build-up anticipation, and they get there and like, boom. I think the season go a lot faster, not just time-wise, but just everything than the off-season. Of course, the off-season is longer. When you add the winter and the spring, and the season only a few months, really. And, you know, even if you add bowl games and everything and prolong it out, it's just not the same. And Colorado's at the place now. We're in the second conference game going down to University of Central Florida, UCF. It's one of those games that a lot of people look forward to, being that so many guys are from Florida, Coach Prime's from Florida, and they always pointed that game out. It was always said to be a competitive game because you got these Florida boys versus Florida boys and all that before the season. And right now, UCF, I believe, is undefeated. They had a couple cupcake games, and then their first week, everybody else was in the conference play. They was off, so they had their bye week, and they're coming back to see you. And from what I'm hearing, it's supposed to be a hurricane coming through there. You know, they do change directions and all, but it's projected to hit within the next couple of days. It's gonna be rainy, possibly all the way up to the game time or the game day. We don't know to what extent. We gonna hope and pray that it goes away or it don't do what they say, just like a lot of storms do. But it could be a rainy game, and it could be something they want, because from what we're hearing, they're one of the top rushing attacks. Again, that's from cupcake data, but I think they barely beat TCU. I think they beat them like 35, 34, and that would technically be considered maybe a non-conference, because was they there last year? I think they're new too. So some of these games were pre-scheduled, like when Arizona was thrashed by Kansas State, and I believe Utah may have had one with was it Baylor, and they didn't technically have that loss there, but it was a conference team, but not a conference game. So right now, we're undefeated in the conference. They are technically undefeated in the conference. We have one loss in the season. They have none. So we're looking for a showdown. Now, a lot of people may not be hip to it yet, but we have one of the top defenses, probably in the conference and eventually in the country when it comes to rushing defense. And that has a lot to do with that linebacker core we were so worried about. And I told people that would make all the difference in the world. We get some linebackers who fill some holes, make some hits, tackle. It making a difference in the defense. And right now, we're looking at our second half defense, if that's a stat, is probably, if not the best, one of the best in the country when you look at what they've allowed in the second half. And not against cupcakes. I think we only had 7 points in the second half. That just happened this past week. Out of the 4 games. If I'm not mistaken, though, they're probably 14, because I know that they scored one late in the game against South Dakota as well. But outside of that, probably 14 points in the second half all year. Nebraska didn't score in the second half. I don't think Kansas State scored in the second half. So when you look at it, we've been called a second half defense. We haven't played a full game. If anything, make a lot of errors or just some fluke plays happen in the first half. They get them behind, but they kind of hold it down, and the offense have to kind of fight back. So we're waiting on a full game from Colorado where it's not that kind of pressure on the offense to score, because in this past game, at least 10 points came out of nowhere. The special teams just fell apart. So it was like, really, that was the difference, a big difference in the game, especially in the beginning, because I know they jumped up in the second quarter. I think it was like 24 by the second quarter. They scored 21 points in the second quarter, and they only was up 24-17 at halftime. But they only scored 3 points in the first quarter, so you do the math. So we scored 7 in the first, and then I think it was 10 in the second. And a big part of that 21, a punt return that resulted in 3 points. I think that was what happened that was the first quarter. And they had a kickoff return They got him a touchdown. And then we did a crazy little field position thing before halftime where we tried to go for like 4th and 8 or something like that. Didn't get it and put them like right on the 4. They ended up scoring not long before halftime. So we really spotted them between just not having special teams. We should have punted there, but probably worried about the return, I don't know. And that kickoff return, special teams was a hurt. It wasn't necessarily a lot of offense. I remember at one point in the game with Baylor, they were saying, hey, you know, the special teams had more yards than offense, and then they ended up scoring. I think he dropped like a, 30-yard bomb down the line. They had 2 bombs they dropped, but outside of that, the offense wasn't really productive, especially with the run. And that's what we're facing this week, a team that's known about running, top in the country in running, top in the conference at least in running, and they have a running quarterback. Now, Colorado is shown to have challenges with running quarterbacks up to this point because South Dakota State had a quarterback that would run. Even though he didn't do a whole lot necessarily scoring-wise, he ended up being, he's the one that scored in that second half late and almost in the end of the game in the 4th quarter to make that game tight. Nebraska didn't really run a lot. I think the guy tried to run a little bit with Colorado State, and Baylor tried to do a little something. But like legit run threats, we're really about to start running into when you look at this team. And you definitely, the next game when you go against Kansas State, Kansas is going to have a running quarterback. Not necessarily Arizona as much. I'm not sure about Cincinnati. Texas Tech may be more air raidish, and, you know, depending on who, but even so, Utah. Oklahoma State, their quarterback really is not that athletic, but I'm sure they all would run it. Especially they feel like they can get away with it. What they're doing is just spreading us out and taking off running. They need to, Colorado need to make the adjustments because they're going to be looking for those run lanes this week. If you got to put another backer in, put them in because you know they're going to do a lot more running than throwing. At least that's what we believe. So it's going to be interesting because their strength against our strength. Our run defense is pretty solid. Our linebackers have shown to be the strongest core up to this point. That group there with experience and knowledge, they hit. They've been doing pretty good. Our safeties come up and hit. Corners been showing they can hit. We get Shadoze won't go back this week. Help clog up some of that. You know, block bully. Definitely needed that. So it's going to be interesting. The only thing we're trying to factor in is it going to be raining? Is it going to be wet? And to what extent? But UCF is going to have the home advantage from a school standpoint. But a lot of these people, the people in Colorado, come from the East Coast and from Florida and from Georgia. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to be down there. I plan on taking a ride down there. So a lot of people from Georgia and Florida is going to be at that game. So I don't know to what extent, but it's not going to be the typical home advantage for UCF like it would against an ordinary Colorado team or coach, because Prime has a lot of fans and supporters on the East Coast because he grew up in Florida, played at Florida State, played at Atlanta Falcons. So again, it's not all the way a home advantage, but maybe the weather can help out, especially if it's wet. And you know, we've been primarily a throwing team. Even in the last game, it was pouring down rain, and we throwing the ball Hail Mary in the rain, hard rain, and it just didn't stop us. And I knew that wasn't going to be a really big issue as much because I saw the fact that even in the spring game, it was, you know, they just went on as usual. It was raining. You wouldn't think it was raining. It was raining and cold. Rain don't stop that show. But we are getting our starting running back, another tool in the tool belt. Hayden coming back this week. And Welch has been getting warmed up. Augustus, they all been filling in pretty well. So we don't have to throw the ball. We've proven we don't have to throw the ball. We will run the ball. We can run the ball. Hopefully we see more, especially if it's wet. And it's definitely going to be, if that team want to run a lot, they definitely can have us in a situation where, you know, they want to limit possessions. That's what the team's prize done, limit possessions. And it'll be kind of that field position, clock management type situation, at least in the first half. And our key is to make sure that you don't let people get out ahead of you and always have to play from behind foolishly because you're making dumb mistakes on defense and your special teams going out there like They just out there for fun, and people returning kicks are getting excellent field position. Can't afford that. But outside of that, it's gonna be interesting. I remember the quarterback had a clipping of Shador on his locker in the offseason, and I think he wanted to rob Shador, even though he's clearly not a passer guy. But this is a showdown that a lot of guys been waiting for. A lot of these little Florida guys that have been waiting. They probably played ball or grew up, played against a lot of these guys that are on our team, and they want to prove something to Coach Prime and all the Florida stuff. They all want to prove something. So it's going to be a showdown, a critical one, because whoever's going to walk out of there is going to be still undefeated. Colorado going to have 2 games in their conference, which is more than what they had last year. They made sure you only beat Arizona State, and that was barely. Utah was taken from you. So you only beat 1 game. Every stat they can throw, they're going to throw it at you. So you kill that. You was 3-1 last year, but now you 4-1. So they're going to say whatever they can say as long as they can. Colorado just got to go 1-0 every week. That's the saying. And they got to go and prove that they can beat these teams and not just Cincinnati or somebody. They didn't even think you can beat Baylor. Now they're saying you're not going to beat UCF. It's time for them to beat another team, beat another Power 5 team, another conference team that they said they couldn't beat. That would be great for them. And if they go into Kansas State and in a situation when they're undefeated and beat Kansas State, they're going to be in a pretty good position, because we're about to see, like I said before, either Oklahoma State or Kansas State about to have their 2nd loss in the conference, legit, because they play each other this week. And somebody going to take that L. And both of these teams were considered a team that could go to the championship. So basically, they only going to be hoping that everybody lose 3 games for them to make it. And if they're going to be playing like that, it's going to be a lot of 2-loss teams. So the longer you stay undefeated, the better. And it puts you in a better position to be able to go to the conference championship, because you will have head-to-head because you beat the teams who you're competing against. So that will help you if y'all have the same record. You can't lose the teams you're supposed to beat. And you need to beat teams they say you can't beat. And this is one of them, UCF. And then we'll worry about the next one after that. But we're going to keep an eye on it. Make sure y'all like, share, subscribe. It's Greg said it. And I'll be talking to y'all soon.